Mach 3, give me crew show on 2, 3, and 4.
Line 1, actually 1.
6, 3. Mach 3, give me start line 2.
5 electric. Mach 3.
Mach 3, give me start line 1 and crew show on 7 and 9.
Line 1, crew show 7 and 9, Mach 3.
Yeah, do something. I hate weapons.
Super Ops, line 3, Reservoir Avionics.
Super Ops. Line 4 is code 3 for engine vibe.
Fuck.
Hey, so I started a Patreon because frankly, this stuff's getting expensive. Nothing will change the podcast or the blog if you don't subscribe, but if you want early access to episodes, monthly AMAs, episode shoutouts, voting on podcast topics, and all kinds of 20 Years Done gear, head over to patreon.com/20yearsdone. This month's top tier Patreon shoutout goes to Kevin Traw, Robbie Walker, Travis Barnes, JT Owens, and Delinda Baker. Thanks for the support. Okay, so today I'm joined by Ashley Grugin, the creator of The Diary of a Mixed Woman, the blog and the vlog. She's joined me for multiple podcasts. I've joined her for discussions. She was an F-16 crew chief for 9 years.
Yep.
Separated a few years ago as a tech sergeant. And I obviously am a F-16 crew chief for, up to 20 years. And I also wanted to say as well, thank you to the patrons that have donated to the podcast, because I use that money to send Ashley a new microphone because she's on enough that I don't want to afflict you guys as little as possible with bad audio. So now she has a high quality microphone. So
here it is, folks. I look good, right?
So if you enjoy the way it sounds and you don't contribute, well, you're a mooch. So anyway, thank you to the patrons that donated. I'm not just taking your money and buying like lottery tickets and shit. Like I'm reinvesting, and there's expenses associated with this podcast.
I would also like to say thank you because I feel fancy with a microphone and professional.
We were talking beforehand that we sound like adults now.
Yep.
So that's something.
So thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Only took me 42 years, and Ashley like 30. What are you, like 30 something?
I turned 30 in January.
Okay. So there you go. Well, I got you the mic for a birthday present.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about a subject, and the first thing I'm going to kind of ask the listeners and the viewers is, I need you to approach this with an open mind, because there's a strong chance we're going to say some things that are going to solicit a little bit of an emotional response. But as all of the podcasts I've done, this is an exploration of a topic. It's going to be done in good faith. I don't necessarily think I have all the answers. I just want to present a different perspective. And I've asked Ashley to join me because she kind of shares my perspective. And I like to have people on that agree with me. So that's helpful. So today we're going to talk about the term, and more importantly, the culture of thank you for your service.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start with at the very outset here. How does it make you feel when a stranger sees you in uniform at like the parking lot of a store and thanks you for your service?
So it's obviously very awkward. And I think most service members would agree that it's kind of awkward because you don't really know what to say. Like, thank you, finger guns type of thing. Like it's so awkward because you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so I picked up on something that others were saying, like, thank you for your support, which, is, I think, as polite as I could be. But it's also, it's weird because if I'm not wearing my uniform, I don't matter.
Yeah, that too.
And then on top of that, like, do you actually care about who I am as a service member, and what have I done to affect your life?
Yep. So, and then also why
are you thanking me?
The tendrils that kind of flow from that is when they buy you lunch, or when you're at an event like a baseball game, the 7th inning, they want all the service members, first responders, law enforcement, to stand up and be recognized. So I feel similar. Like it makes me uncomfortable. My go-to was "Thank you for thanking me,"
Mm.
which is similar to "Thank you for your support."
Yeah.
But we are definitely going to deconstruct the word support a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's awkward. It feels like it's a little less awkward when it's other veterans or when it's older, like older people. What really kind of irks me is when it's like a mother and like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
She prompts the kid to like go thank him, and then the kid comes over and says, "Thank you for your service." We're teaching so right off the bat, that bothers me because you're teaching them to say the words until you're teaching them to before you're teaching them to understand why it matters.
Yeah.
So you've already reversed what's going on here.
Yeah.
So to me, that's problematic as well. And also, I have a whole problem accepting like gifts or meals. So it's like even worse when I'll be honest, like when I find out someone's going to pay for my meal and I haven't ordered yet, I fucking reduce what I was going to order to like lighten the hit to that person. So literally by doing that, they've ruined my fucking lunch right off the bat.
Absolutely.
It's
one thing if like you've already eaten and someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to pay for their tab," and they, I don't know until I'm asking for the check, at that point. But like when they offer to pay before you've even ordered, you're just like, dude.
Be like, I'll have a large water and crackers.
Like I was going to pig out, man.
Yeah.
I'm at B-dubs and you're depriving me of the wings that I came here for.
Yep. So that's one thing. Although there was a time when I was a bit of a bigger douchebag when I was an instructor. Like this is very often this podcast, I like to deconstruct what a piece of shit I am and was. Like that's an important for like the entire picture of who I am and everything. When I was an instructor and we would go to lunch. Now it's also important to note as an instructor, I was not carrying the mission nearly as much as the guys and girls working on the line, but we would take lunch. And man, I feel embarrassed. I feel like genuine shame even talking about this. But when we would go to like a sit down restaurant, because we could do that as instructors, I would intentionally ask to be sat near like older ladies in uniform because I would like bet
that they're
going to pay for our fucking lunch.
Yeah.
Which I know that goes against everything I just said, but it's important to note I'm admitting I was a shameful piece of shit then as well, trying to like.
Yeah, we're all witnessing your journey of self-reflection.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Like every single episode, my girlfriend like mentions like, man, that was really brave. And so she's listening right now and she's like, oh, he's talking about me. So she's probably gritting your ear. But I'm just letting her know what she's getting into. So it's eyes wide open for her.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go back to thank you for your service. And let's talk about why is that problematic? Do you think?
I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it, like the deep dive. Yeah, because I'm really focused on self-reflection just like you are. And so everything to me is root cause analysis.
Hold up. Before you start, I just want to throw out there where I think a national movement towards thank you for your support came from. And then we can deconstruct a little bit deeper.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think with Vietnam, they supplanted a lot of regular Americans supplanted their perception, their political viewpoint of the war onto the service member in the war. Mm-hmm. So there was very low popular support for Vietnam. So when service members came back, very often garbage was thrown on them. They were called baby killers. I think it was also one of the very first wars where there was like real video coming out of the war as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think Vietnam was any more visceral or terrible as far as atrocities go than certainly probably not World War II, but you didn't see it in real time from journalists. Mm-hmm. I think that was one of the first times Americans got a sense of how terrible war is.
Right.
And then there was very low political and popular support for the war. So when service members came back, they were really ostracized and thrown garbage on. I think it's also really important to note that a lot of them were fucking drafted. And like, if you look at like that feeling of you're drafted against your will, you might like ideologically not agree with this war, but you either go to prison or fucking go. So you go, and then you probably experience psychological harm, combat, PTSD, all kinds of these things. And then you come back to a population calling you a baby killer and throwing garbage on you. So I think I'm doing a very short version here,
Yeah.
but that's a horrible fucking situation to be in for the regular service member that didn't kill babies, was drafted, and probably had some psychological harm, which I suspect is like a vast majority of Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know when the country started turning it around, but
I want to say it was around the Gulf War.
Probably.
Is because that's when they started doing like the parades when they would come home and stuff.
I think that's fair. And I think there's also, man, this is a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. I don't think we will, but I think the reason is, I think there might have been national shame because we essentially lost Vietnam. What's really fucking weird is the United States never admits to losing wars. Like we didn't win Vietnam. We didn't, right?
Yeah.
Like we just didn't. So I think when the Gulf War came, and I think the nation was like embarrassed and ashamed. And I think when the Gulf War came and it was such a decisive victory, although I would argue that, you know, Saddam Hussein stayed in power and, you know, committed genocide against Kurds. And so it's arguable if it was a victory, but certainly we pushed him out of Kuwait. And that was definitely a win, like no doubt a win.
Yeah.
And the full employment of our air power military might. We got to see it live on TV as it happened, and it was quick, I think. And then the parades happened. I think it was like the nation, the regular person felt like we were winners again.
Yeah.
So let's celebrate this victory. It was a noble thing to do, getting an oppressive sort of regime or an invasion out of Kuwait. There was no like we had a full coalition political. So I think it made it really easy to appreciate service members. And you're right. That's when parades started. And I think there was probably a national reckoning where we recognized that we really did a disservice and harm to returning Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then 9/11 happened. And now you're looking at an attack on American soil of civilians that were just walking around doing their everyday things, like going to work. And I think it really let the regular American citizen know that they were vulnerable to war conditions. I mean,
and it was traumatic. I mean, people experience PTSD from that because and think about how often it was replayed over and over and over again. So there's a programmatic piece to that as well, but that was devastating for the country.
Yeah. So that was like the first time the regular citizen felt the country, I think, was genuinely under attack.
Yep.
And the service member
Since
was
World
now,
War II.
Yeah, right. Like literally. And so now the service member is a frontline defense against outside aggressors to them personally.
Yeah.
Like it was the shield, right? So I think it really kind of kicked up this thank you for your service thing. And
well,
so
yeah, because I mean, they delayed. I remember that year because they postponed NFL games and stuff like that. And I was at Lodges Field Air Force Base when it happened, which was a huge deal because, you know, that's a transient location. Yeah. So, and my dad was working on the flight line at the time. So
you know what's fucking really wild? This is a true story. I very well missed meeting your dad because in 2001 I was tapped to go to Morón, Spain on a TDY for 3 months to do TA, right?
Yeah.
And I got arrested and put in jail for a night. And so that's not a story for the podcast, but
okay. I was like, I need to know more about that.
It's really not a very good story.
Okay.
Like it's me just being a dumb airman and not paying a speeding ticket and there being a warrant for my arrest and me getting pulled over for expired tags. And then that was it. So, but either way, I got thrown in jail right when I was like getting ready to out process for the TDY. And my senior was like, you're not going now because we're going to backfill this person. And I was told the per diem was gonna be like $100 a day.
Oh dang!
So I was like, I'm gonna get like so much fucking money from this. And it was beginning on September 1st was the day. September 1st, 2001 was the day you're supposed to be there. And so I got bumped, and then somebody else took the spot. And first of all, the per diem was $7 a day.
Oof.
And then September 11th happened 11 days later, and much like the Azores, Morón was like every cargo plane on the planet was filtering through the Azores and Morón to get to the desert to start setting up forward locations. So I imagine when September 11th popped off, your dad was like, 24-hour ops at work
Oh, yeah.
for like months, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We all had to go home from school, and my mom was sent home from work, and she was on the phone with my dad trying to figure out what's going on. And he was like, just close all of the blinds, lock the doors, and I will stay in touch with you as often as I can. But I'm really, really busy right now. And that was
Yeah.
basically it for several days. And I remember it. It was devastating.
But that's the background as we see it for thank you for your service, right?
Yeah.
So now we've set that stage. Why do you think thank you for your service is problematic? Which is the first question I asked, but now we're back to it.
I have just so many words coming from my head right now. Like, so I know that this is definitely, I think some people are going to be turned off by some of the things that I have to say,
Sure.
but I feel like it's basically some type of indoctrination. Oh, the NFL thing. That's what I was going to talk about. So, they delayed NFL games and stuff like that. And then that's when they started doing the promotions of,
Yeah.
and making the players come out of the locker room for the national anthem. And then they started doing the flyovers and all that stuff. And then they turn it into a really patriotic event and all that kind of stuff.
Which is frustrating because they charge the military to do that. Like,
yeah.
they made the military pay millions of dollars in order to volunteer service members to go on the field and unfurl the flag, which everyone thought was like this grand showing of like NFL solidarity and patriotism. When the reality was, it was a Air Force PA marketing
recruiting
stunt that was charged. Like, we had to pay taxpayer money in order to give the appearance the NFL was patriotic.
Yeah,
that's a bit problematic.
It was a legitimate recruiting tool, and so that leads me into the point that I was going to make, and that it's some type of indoctrination. You know what I mean? Like, you're now like reaffirming some type of like nationalistic type of view of, and patriotism and stuff like that. And I'm not saying altogether that created indoctrination.
Sure.
But it feels very close to it to me. And I have a huge problem with it because there are so many issues that veterans face. Once they get out of they literally tell you in transition assistance program, as you're getting out of the military, whether you're retiring or separating or whatever, what have you, that the American people and civilian businesses don't give a flying fuck about your military service unless they are like contractors with DOD or a federal job.
I think that's a great point. And we are definitely, I'm going to touch on that later, but I think it's important to note that I think they care. I don't think TAP says they don't care. I think TAP says they don't understand any of it.
Yeah.
So I think they like veterans, and I think there's certainly also, they talk, at least in TAPS, and I think other places, about the stigma of, they assume every veteran has PTSD, every veteran has killed somebody, everybody's deployed, everybody's seen combat. There's like, and that's, I think, goes to what's going to end up being the underlining thread of this conversation of, there's a whole fuckload of ignorance of the military service member and veteran experience, which to me is why I really hate the thank you for your service, because it's a cop-out.
Yeah, I feel like we're political pawns, and that the only time that people care is when someone says something about some type of legislation or someone's kneeling during the national anthem. Yeah. Like, we're only used as political pawns. No one actually, look at our homeless veteran population that is not decreasing. There are some places that are trying to do a lot better about it and doing the, small home communities and stuff like that. And they have better programs now to help transition veterans and stuff like that. But we still have a veteran homelessness population. And then we have the suicides.
Yep.
And we have a significant lack of quality health care, especially when it comes to the VA. You've got people that I'm still trying to get an appointment with mental health.
Yep. So, and I'll also say, like, it's important to note that you didn't say it is a conservative problem or a Democrat.
Absolutely
like, it's
not.
I agree. I think both liberal, conservative, Democrat, and Republican, they use the veteran feather in their hat to bolster their political position, because veterans is one of the few things that is like, you can reach out to any congressman and say, if you have a problem with veteran stuff, they're going to act, because the veterans sort of, it crosses that ideological boundaries. But I think you're right. politically veterans are used by both parties equally
Yeah.
to try to get jabs against the other, which really just goes back to a frustration where as a service member you're used as a tool by the government, and a lot of times you don't agree with how you're being used.
Yeah.
And then as a veteran you're used as a political tool by the government and you don't agree how you're being used.
Absolutely.
I think going back to the whole indoctrination point you made, like, there's nothing wrong with patriotism. There is
Right.
nothing wrong with being proud of your service, being
Absolutely.
proud of the country, being proud of the flag, being proud of American ideals. Like, being proud, there is nothing wrong with that. But I think when you are forcing others to manifest that pride, or when you're attacking someone for not exhibiting that pride, to me, that's problematic. That's what Kim Jong-un would do. If you don't cry when he walks by, they drag you off and beat you senseless because you're
Yeah.
anti their God King or whatever. And there's a fine line between that indoctrination of, everything a service member does, or everything the military does, or everything the government does is aligned with American ideals,
Yeah.
and just being a regular patriot, that you're proud of the freedoms that your country has created and how it has helped the world be a better place.
Yeah.
So I kind of pity the next person to thank me for my service, because they're just going to I'm just going to download, unfortunately, on them. Because what really bothers me is thanking me for my service takes the caloric equivalent of like 1 calorie to move your mouth to make those words, to exhale the air to me so that I can hear it. Like, the
Yeah.
effort there is really fucking low, right? And I wouldn't necessarily mind if you thank me for my service if you also advocated for, like, your congressman to adequately fund the military, if you advocated for your congressman to hold military leaders accountable that were harming the service, that were mismanaging the service. Like, you can thank me for my service as the bow on the advocacy that you've done, because my concern is, if all you're doing is thanking me for my service, you as the person thanking me are like, okay, well, I support veterans. Let me wrap that up with a nice, neat bow. And now I'm good. I don't have to fucking do anything. And to
Yeah.
me, that's what fucking angers me. It's like, don't thank me for my service. Like, do something to make the military better.
Yeah.
Do something to make the service members' livelihood, resources, like, because when I look at the sum of my career, and when, doing this advocacy work for this project and interacting with people and getting private messages and stuff, like, I can see the marriages falling apart. I can see the mental health toll, the anger, the anxiety, the stress, the depression, the
Oh, yeah.
substance abuse, the bad conduct and dishonorable discharges because the person psychologically couldn't handle military service, because it's just set up to kind of fuck them over unless they're really, really fucking strong and resilient. Like, I see all of that. And I believe a lot of it can be fucking fixed if we address the problems. And the person in the fucking supermarket parking lot thinking my service, them doing it absolves them of their perceived responsibility to do anything about it. And that fucking enrages me. What do you think? Like, so I guess my question is, am I too jaded? Am I too calloused with that approach, that don't fucking thank me unless you're really doing something?
No, I would, and that's why I think we're 100% where we agree, but I think we have some slightly different perspectives, because I certainly agree with everything that you just said, but I also have a lot of different other issues because of my gender and my race.
Right.
Because those things are generally not cared about outside of my uniform.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. There's been a few of my female service member friends on Facebook, especially with Veterans Day. There was very much comments of
the Fabletics thing.
The what?
Did you hear about the Fabletics thing?
Oh, yeah. Where they were only giving the yoga pants discount to men, which, by the way, most men don't wear yoga pants. I'd like to fucking point that out. But either way,
right?
Yeah, it goes to that, or them asking for the veterans discount, and the person at the counter, or whatever, oh, is your husband? Like, there's the automatic assumption. So it's like, you guys probably don't even get thanked for your service at the same rate I do.
No.
So then it's like a double. Well, I guess it's like, now it's like, well, what the fuck do you want? Do you want to be thanked for your service?
I don't.
Do you not want to be thanked?
I don't, but I think that even though when I am thanked. I don't feel that it's 100% genuine, and I, again, because of everything else that service members experience in and out of the military, in and out of uniform, on top of the fact that I am a female of color, they're just, what are you doing to ensure that if you do care about veterans, what are you doing for them?
Yeah.
How are you contributing to the betterment of their mental health? How are you contributing to the betterment of their availability to get jobs and stay off of the streets from homelessness, or, to keep them from killing themselves ultimately?
And I would argue, what are you doing to help service members now to reduce the harm they're experiencing, so that way when they transition to being a veteran,
Absolutely.
they aren't suicidal.
Yes.
They aren't like, I'm not saying all veterans are broken people, but there are definitely veterans that are.
We are
broken
definitely
people.
highly misunderstood individuals, that is for sure, like as a group.
What kind of goes to this thread as well is when I see Iran doing stuff that's not like good, or I see North Korea doing stuff that's not good, or China doing stuff that's not good. Like all those little like paper cut type of international sort of conflicts where, North Korea fires some missile over into the water or captures a boat. Iran does something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then this very well could be a symptom of me being on social media too much. Like that's a distinct possibility. But I see these guys and girls. I shouldn't even say guys and girls. These men and women, because these are definitely adults, usually 30 plus, 40 plus, or whatever, basically outside the age range for military service.
Mm-hmm.
And they start doing this national ego collective bragging, like, oh, we have the best military in the world, we're going to go over there and kick their fucking ass.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know who they're fucking with. And it's like, bitch, you're writing a fucking check with my ass.
Yes.
Right? Like, what the fuck are you doing sitting in your Cabela's camo fucking chair with an ill-fitting shirt, angrily typing into Facebook that like my brothers are going to have to fucking deploy or engage in combat in South Korea and possibly die because your ego was bruised,
right?
That this country had the audacity to make any military overtures at all whatsoever. Like, yeah, it's really fucking easy to send people
and
to
not have to
another
deal with the
country.
psychological effects that it has on you.
Those are also the people that thank you for your service. And it
The
really
keyboard
fucking
warriors.
bothers me. It really fucking bothers me.
I will tell you that in a very similar fashion, I felt the same way when America was trying to tell me that I'm supposed to be upset that Colin Kaepernick is kneeling during the national anthem.
Right. Like that there is a broad spectrum of military political ideology. Like for me, I wouldn't necessarily kneel for the anthem.
Yeah.
But I am like, if he wants to, great. And it very much reminds me, this is the best way I can kind of explain this. When I was in Korea in 2002, 2003, there was a Army vehicle that was a tracked vehicle, like an armored personnel carrier, and it was driving through Seoul, doing like regular, driving from one garrison to another or something. But the communication system between the guy up in the observation turret and the driver looking through the slits, it wasn't working. And two schoolgirls had began crossing the street, and the driver couldn't see them, and the guy up in the top couldn't alert him, and they ran him over and killed him instantly. Right? There was no, it was not they didn't do it. They didn't like try to kill him or anything like that. It was legitimately, again, our shit in the military isn't like well resourced, so shit doesn't work. And this is the stuff that happens when you try to spread yourself too thin, doing too many things with not enough money to fucking do it. Spoiler. And what happened is there was all these protests. Like, so the guys, because of the status of forces agreements, they were handled in a military court, and the evidence was provided. And the military court's like, yeah, there was not a criminal act here, and they were acquitted. And then the attorney for the two guys are like, they can't stay in fucking Korea because the Korean people want to like kill them. So they were setting them up to fly out on the rotator out of Osan, and they were on Osan. And so the protests and the rioting moved to the gates of Osan. Of course, we were locked down and all this stuff. And there was like legitimate like outcry, throwing rocks, throwing bottles, signs. I mean, there was thousands of people thronging around the base. And a bunch of the people I worked with were really fucking pissed off. Like, how dare they like protest us? We're here away from our families. We don't want to fucking be here defending them. And they're going to complain like, fuck them. Like, they're lucky we're here and they should not be fucking complaining. I was like, hold the fuck on.
Yeah.
Like, could they be doing this in North Korea? Nope. So,
Right.
like, the fact that they get to protest is a validation that you're doing your fucking job really well and
Yeah.
you're like creating the space for the freedoms. And the free speech is specifically designed to be able to complain against the government
Yes.
without like repercussions, which is exactly what they're doing. Like, yeah, it sucks that we're in this position, but the fact they can do it to me is like really fucking rewarding.
Yeah.
Which of course goes back to the kneeling for the flag. Like, I wouldn't kneel for the flag,
No.
but I'm proud that Colin Kaepernick could, right?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't go to jail. It's like, it's not even necessarily a free speech issue because the government didn't put him in jail, right?
Right.
And the NFL was like, hey, you're fucking tanking our like sales, our ratings, and our money. So like we can't do this anymore. You need to fucking stop. Let's find a workaround. And Colin Kaepernick, by his principles, was like, nope, like this is what's gonna fucking happen.
Yes.
And then he got fired and
Blackballed.
Arguably he got blackballed, but he's not in prison.
Yeah.
Like, he's not in prison. That I feel like it worked. It worked very, very well. And if
I
anything,
think it worked, but I think that when it was happening, that was the point that I was getting at. I have a whole country that I am in service of that is telling me that I'm supposed to be offended by these actions.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, but did you even bother to ask me as a veteran, as a person of color who identifies with the issues that he's kneeling for? But you didn't ask me. You told me. And it's a bunch of people that are related to someone in the military but never actually served, or just straight up keyboard warriors that have never, they've never served or don't even have family members that did serve.
That's going to be my next point. You're a genius. Thank you. And so I will also say too, I think it's folly when people view the veteran as a completely autonomous or single ideological and single demographic type of like, when the average person thinks veteran, they think conservative, white, male, heterosexual. Like, and that's not, I'm not getting into like a whole identity politics thing.
No, I agree with you.
I know. I would challenge any listener to go, unfortunately I already kind of spilled the beans on this, but I think if you're honest with yourself and you close your eyes and you envision a veteran, I think odds are you're going to see a conservative, heterosexual, white male is what you're going to see. And the reality is that's not the case. And what's extra disturbing is obviously not all my listeners are heterosexual, conservative white males. So I'd be really interested to see
I'm literally the antithesis of all those things.
Right. But I'm wondering if there's a listener out there that is a liberal woman, lesbian, person of color. If she closes her eyes, does she see a heterosexual, conservative white male? I wonder.
I know I won't speak for that person, but I can tell you that I have done that.
Right. Okay. So my hypothesis is at least anecdotally validated for further review.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is on Veterans Day, I sent Ashley a message going, man, we should have fucking recorded that thank you for our service podcast before Veterans Day. And she's like, oh, shit, you're right. Then again, if I released it the day before Veterans Day, there might have been like an uprising. Who knows? But what also kind of bothers me is I got to pick my words carefully here. Like, I'm certainly proud of my service. I'm very fucking proud of my service. And actually, I think most of the time my profile picture is me in my mess dress. And I changed my profile picture for Veterans Day to a non-uniform picture.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do like that I serve virtue signaling sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very like, I love American ideals. I'm very proud of my service. Like, I'm not ashamed of my service at all. Besides, when I talked about where I was a piece of shit and or a terrible toxic boss that psychologically harmed people. And I'm also not making light of that. I'm genuinely not proud of those things. But what really bothers me is sometimes I see people that didn't serve post a picture of like their grandfather that served on Veterans Day.
Ew.
And like, it's really hard to split the hair between, are they doing that because they're like trying to like give homage to their grandfather and for the sacrifices they make, or what they trying to do? Are they
looking for thank you for your service?
Are they right? Are they like by proxy latching on to that service as a virtue signal. Like I've very often seen like, well, I didn't serve, but my brother did.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's like not on Veterans Day. It's like in conversations, like, okay, you're still not included in this fucking conversation because you didn't actually sacrifice.
Right.
And we're talking about military service here. You can sit and listen, and you can maybe take some of this to your fucking brother. And I'd be interested in your brother's fucking perspective.
Right.
But I'm not interested in what the fuck you have to say when I'm talking about the intricacies of military service.
Yes.
Like you can listen and then you can like maybe come back, but don't try to fucking create some veteran street cred of, oh, this person served, so now I am a part of your culture. I am a part of your community. And now I'm going to fucking talk on it.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're not. Like, you're not.
Right.
So, and I don't know if I'm just being ornery and like, I don't know if I'm being stupid about this, but when I see that, like my grandpa served on this day, it's really hard for me to tell if they're just being proud or if they're trying to curry veteran status through their, like, as, oh, my family has suffered.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's kind of difficult. It's easier to tell when it's someone that's in the service and they're showing like their ancestral line of,
oh, sure.
You know,
like my buddy Nate Allison.
Yeah.
Like his grandfather served, I think, in World War II. His father served. He served. So on Veterans Day, he shows like his family is fucking all in.
Yes.
And I would like when Nate's also a badass. I don't think he listens, so I can say that without worrying about inflating his ego. And in fairness, he needs his ego inflated because he's like 4'6" or something, so he could use the help. But like I don't fault him for that. Like that makes perfect sense. You have like a family thing going on.
That's a proud heritage, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the person that's like a pure civilian, and on Veterans Day, they're trying to latch on to that.
Yeah, because well, I mean, think about the status that we've elevated our service members to. Even though they are used for political pawns and things of that nature, you know, we've ever since 9/11, it has been, you know, widely celebrated to be a service member. And, you know, you've got this, you know, hero complex and how that's associated with, you know, being a service member. So
also, it goes back to something that I've said before when I first years ago started like trying to articulate why thank you for your service bothers me. Sometimes there's really shitty service members like walking around, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, anybody listening and you actually like think of the worst fucking airman or the worst staff sergeant, the guy that was like stealing oxygen, the guy that was like lazy as fuck, didn't know how to do anything, like always looked like a bag of smashed assholes. Like the guy that was just fucking awful. And you're like,
taking up space for a qualified individual could be,
right?
Yeah.
So all I think is when that guy's walking around the supermarket parking lot, there's some person coming up going, thank you for your service. And it goes back to the whole Dunning-Kruger conversation about like the dumbest chief that I ever knew in my entire life, for the McGee theory of linear intelligence.
Yeah.
Somebody thanked him. And he's too dumb to know that he was like degrading the mission by coming to work. And so like when you don't understand that you're not good and you're not competent and you're not supporting the mission, and somebody comes up to you and says, thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're consistently told that you're a hero of some sort.
Yeah. You're like, they should thank me. Like, yeah. Right. And those people also probably have no qualms. They don't have that, well, I'm just going to order water and crackers for lunch. They're like, well, I'm a fucking hero, so I'm going to get the foot long instead of the 6-inch. And I'm going to. So I think when you blanket thank everyone for their service, you're running the risk of thanking people that are actually like, you know, think of all the horrible toxic leaders I've written about in my blog and talked about without necessarily naming here. Like when someone thanks them for their service, you're rewarding their fucking shitty behavior.
Yeah. They like, may not actually truly deserve it, to be 100% honest. Yeah. And
what you might be doing is like encouraging them to keep doing what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Because they go, well, you know, even though they're not going to think about it like in real time, their brain process is going to be, well, what I'm doing gets me accolades, and they're never going to know what I'm doing or not doing. Yeah. So I can just fucking keep on keeping on.
But doesn't that, what's funny about that is that how that ties into how do they actually care about service members? Because if they did, then they would know a little bit more about what we do and the things that we deal with, whether it's, you know, the physical bullshit that we have to do, or the psychological and traumatic effects of the things that we experience and have to do or have to deal with.
I think what it is it's a cop out. Like, way back in the day in the 310th, we had like cleanliness standards for the jets. They would get scored every Thursday or some shit like that. And the standard was a score of 75, which, at the time you felt like it was an objective thing. But the reality was, when you're grading jets and stuff like that, you can fucking like totally manipulate those numbers.
Mhm.
But the standard was 75, and I was working swing shift. And I think I was either the lead 7 level or one of the heavy lifting sort of 7 levels. That was when we were in the middle of like, horrible no start issues where I was working a lot of hours. And we had a new flight chief take over, but he was like prior Thunderbirds, and he had like the flat top. And like, you've seen that meme going around, like, dudes with haircuts like this are guaranteed to keep you after 1800.
Facts.
Like, yeah. So he was that guy. And I came in on Friday, and my jet scored like a 75.5, which was passing for the cleanliness standards. And I got told that the new flight chief thought our jets looked like shit. And we were all, anybody that got below an 80 was going to have to fucking come in on the weekend.
Ew.
And I was like, wait a minute. You set the standard.
To clean a fucking jet.
Yeah, well, so I was like, in fairness, there's times of me when I was a toxic flight chief, I threatened to bring people on the weekend, I think. I probably did. I might have blocked out when I was the biggest piece of shit ever, where I actually brought people in to clean jets. I suspect I probably did.
Oh my God.
Well, maybe you won't come on this podcast anymore because you know the true me and how terrible I
No,
am. But
it's fine. It's just disturbing.
the look on your face.
I can't, dude. What the fuck? Like, you're really gonna shit on someone's whole ass weekend for a demo jet or a grading of a jet? Like, get the fuck out of here.
But the important thing was, like, they set it at a 75, and I met that standard, and then they retroactively raised the fucking standard.
Like, what the fuck?
So I was like fucking livid.
As you should be.
So actually, I think it was actually earlier in the week. I think it was like a Tuesday, because the rest of the week, like, my expediter, Brian Ingram, would he's like, hey, I need you to do this and this and this. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm cleaning my jet for the next 2 fucking hours, because besides when I'm on weekend duty, broke jets don't fucking drag me in on the weekend. Yeah. And my flight chief has just told me that I will lose my weekend, not for the jet being broken, but for the fucking jet being dirty. Yes. So that just shifted my priority. So for the next 2 hours, I'm going to clean my jet so I can try to anticipate whatever this varying retroactive standard will be, so I can meet that standard in anticipation. And like, Brian was frustrated. He was like, I fucking get it. So I came in on that weekend, and they drug everybody in the conference room, and Borov was like lighting everybody up, calling everybody pieces of shit, and they don't deserve to be DCCs. And he had us go around and like make some admission that we had failed as DCCs /NCOs /leaders.
This makes me want to
I know.
Throw up.
When it came to me, I literally just sat there in awkward silence. He's like, well, Sergeant McGee, we're waiting on you. I'm like, I literally said, I met the fucking standard. There's no fucking reason for me to be here. You changed the standard retroactively. I'm not admitting to anything, and I'm not fucking doing anything. So let me know when I can leave. And there was like this huge sort of conflict. I got pulled aside, and I got told by somebody, like, just go out and clean for 15 minutes, and I've been assured that your jet's going to like be good enough or whatever. And I was fucking super salty. So like a week or two later, I took leave, like a week off. I already had it planned for months or whatever. And this was back in the day when we had paperwork. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, my assistant flight chief, he came up to me in the parking lot. He's like, hey man, I'm just going to go ahead and throw away that leave paperwork. You can just, you're good. And I was like, no, you need to like process that, because I know why you're doing this, because you feel bad about not standing up for me. And that if I accept this free time off, you're going to feel absolved of being courageless. So being a coward. Yeah. So no, file it, charge me the leave, because you need to keep the shame and guilt you have. I'm not fucking letting you off the hook.
Makes me sick.
And I think that goes back to the thank you for your service thing. I think it's letting them off the hook. And I think it's probably the same people that are keyboard warriors and national ego, fragile ego people, where they want to go to war with everybody because they just want to be the biggest and the best and the baddest. I think those are the same people thank you for the service, because that's how they wash away the harm that they're causing through their outspoken advocacy for military conflict, just for the sake of them feeling tough and patriotic. And I think very frequently, I'm definitely going on some weird psychological rabbit hole. I think very frequently it's people that didn't serve that wish they had, and they're vicariously feeling like a service member by advocating for us engaging in conflict. Like, we can send our army over there and kick their ass, and I still feel like I'm a fucking badass.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like my. I have a
really bad taste in my mouth right now.
I ruined this fucking podcast, huh?
God, I'm just so disgusted by that. But I mean, I get the connection that you're making. All of those things make me sick, because like, who are you? Who are you to stand on this soapbox and preach whatever it is that you're preaching about our veterans? You don't know the first thing about what it's like to be a veteran. And I won't say that the American people don't care, because I don't know that they 100% do. Because I know several people who got out of the military and thought that their military career was going to help get them somewhere, and it didn't. It was absolutely ignored even. And it's just so careless, and no one takes the time to understand veterans. No one understands like the isolation that we go through as, service members, being away from our families and having to develop essentially a second family, which is only built on the fact that they are in the military as well, going through the suck with you. And nobody takes the time to get to know that about veterans. And again, with the Colin Kaepernick thing, did you ask someone who was in the military how they felt about this? Did you ask a person of color who was in the military how they felt about this, or even a veteran or whatever, what have you? You went around telling everyone that we were supposed to feel some type of way. And now after George Floyd, you're apologizing, saying, oh, we get it now.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it speaks to the underlying, it's like a common thread of people that don't understand the service member experience, don't actively engage in the service member experience to make it better through advocacy, through their congressional, through whatever. Right. It's very sort of an afterthought. It's the thank you for your service. We're going to go over there and kick your ass, and you're disrespecting service members by kneeling.
Yes.
Like, it's those are three very sort of common. I imagine that's the same person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it seems like that's the same person. That very well could be my bias kind of kicking in. But I mean, we're almost out of time. So I guess my final takeaway here is, like, I feel like you only have a license to thank a veteran for his service if you've done something to make their lives better. And I don't mean, everybody knows that I am hyper passionate about veteran suicides. Like, I am very passionate about that. I'm not, when I say doing something for veterans, I don't mean 22 push-ups a day and posting it on social media. That's not doing something. Like, do we think that people don't know that 22 veterans a day kill themselves? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago we didn't know that, but spoiler, everyone fucking knows now. It's time to stop doing push-ups, because everyone knows veterans are killing themselves at that number. So that's not doing something anymore. It might have been doing something 4 years ago and bringing attention
it's definitely
to it,
highlighted the issue, but now there's, we're at the point where we've acknowledged that it's an issue. What are we doing to move forward? And I mean, that could be said about so many different social and political issues throughout the country. All right, we've raised the awareness now. What are you guys going to help us do about it?
It goes back to, like, can you imagine, like, if every time you went to the doctor, they did a test to diagnose you, and then they sent you home, and then you came back into to the follow-up appointment. It's like, we're going to do a blood test and check your numbers. They're like, oh, okay, just so we can, like, adjust the treatment. They're like, yeah. They get the blood test. Like, okay, so we got your blood numbers. We're going to make a follow-up appointment. Like, well, wait a minute. You fucking got my numbers 2 weeks ago. Like, yes, I have a condition. I have a problem.
You've collected the
What
data.
What the fuck are we going to do about it,
Yes.
right? So, like,
What's the treatment plan now? How are we adjusting the
think-
treatment plan?
I think the only way a person, so I'm gonna say it this way: in order to have a license to thank somebody from the service, you either need to be a service member, be a veteran. You know, I'm not the fucking lord of thanking licenses, but maybe a spouse too. Like, yeah, they certainly
They at least have a better like they have the depth of understanding of what it's like to be a service member because it's in their face.
And I think they've also suffered vicarious harm for the same policies that hurt service members.
Definitely.
Deployments, the stress, the anxiety,
the isolation. I mean, my
Sure.
family grew up overseas. You know, we spent 12 years overseas before I joined the military. So my mom and my dad were both dislocated from their families. You know what I mean? And you know, they're in a foreign country. So spouses go through shit, and I 100% agree with that. But I have to agree with
you need to, if you don't have like a genuine connection to the military, you need, in order to thank someone for your service, you need to thank for their service and follow up with, I emailed my congressman about Vanessa Guillen.
Yeah.
I voted for this person specifically because they did this work for veterans, or they were talking about doing this.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to thank them from their service to absolve you of your involvement in the continuing harm. Because the reality is, if you're not doing something to make the service member's life better, then you're complicit in the service member's life being terrible.
Absolutely.
I think that's the absolute fucking reality. Yes. Because if you're not noisy about it, then everyone thinks everything's fucking fine. So if you want to thank a service member, you need to fucking earn that. Yeah. You absolutely need to fucking earn it. And I think a lot of people don't.
I wanted to say one more thing about this kind of stuff, and the things that I see on social media is like a jet will go down and, you know, until Valhalla for my brothers and sisters that have lost their lives in service to our country. But, you know, you get these people who, you know, make us think about it when that happens, and they do it for a couple of days while it's trending. Mm-hmm. And then it's the next thing, and they don't care about it again. And they don't care about it anymore until, you know, the next holiday celebrating veterans or the next death of a veteran. What are you doing? If you care about veterans and you care about veteran families, what are you doing for those veteran families who are suffering, who just lost a loved one in service to their country? What is thanking me for going to do about it?
Or how about if you were proactive instead of reactive, they wouldn't have died in the first place?
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously. Right? There's that.
It's really easy to reshare a post and then 2 days later go back to shopping at Walmart for great value fucking napkins and shit.
Right. So. Where's the action? And that applies to so many different things, obviously, but where's the action? If you really care, if this is a problem that you think should be talked about more, then why aren't you talking about it? Why aren't you doing more to help? Why aren't you advocating? You know, just like what you're saying, why are you not getting involved? Why are you not contacting your legislators and your congressmen and women and, you know, all those different things? Like, are you getting to know veterans? Are you going to vet centers and talking to them and learning more about the actual sacrifices, not just the ones that they, you know, put on television commercials and they talk about during the Super Bowl or whatever.
And I think part of that is, and it goes back to our conversation kind of tangentially that we had before we started recording, like when you go there and hear about those experiences, as an American citizen that pays taxes and votes in politicians and does not have a service affiliation, be it a spouse, service member, or whatever, you need to recognize that what they're describing, the harm of their experience that they're describing, that's your fault. Like, you supported that, whether you knew you were supporting it or not. And you need to come to terms with, you know, it very well could be like, fuck, man, like World War II, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody that felt bad. I mean, we lost a whole bunch of people died. Mm-hmm. But it was like, you're talking about an existential threat, a genocide, a tyrant. Like that is 100% fucking worthy of losing American lives over, of sending people over to die for the sake of saving the world. Like that's not a difficult like moral and psychological like balancing act. It's not. But I think if you're willing to sit down and listen to veterans that served in Vietnam, probably the Korean War as well, because that was very much a proxy war, fought not because it was a threat to American soil. Vietnam, like those wars, and probably to a lesser degree Afghanistan, depending on what you might see or what you might think. If you're going to sit down and talk to a veteran and hear about all of their experiences and how it changed their life and who died that they knew, the injuries, both visible and invisible, they sustained, you need to reconcile the fact that in a very like in 1/350 millionth way, you sent that person, you contributed to that harm. And then obviously when you multiply that by all the service members, all the people killed and stuff, it starts to add up. And I think it's important for you to recognize that you are a party of that, because it should change what you're willing to do going forward. If you take on the blame and the guilt of this service member you're sitting with, it shouldn't be, I'm sorry you experienced that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I made you experience that. And I think for me, the next time I'm thanked for my service, which is pretty rare because I don't stand up to fucking baseball games, I don't have veteran plates. Like, I mean, I carry myself in such a way. And I got this cheesy ass proud veteran homeowner shirt, but I only wear it because it's super comfortable. But everybody thinks I'm like this diehard veteran. But my next question is going to be, when someone thanks you for the service, be like, what did you do to earn saying thank you? Explain to me what you've done for veteran advocacy before I will even consider thanking or accepting your thank you. Like that's something you earn.
Yeah.
So walk me through it. What did you do?
Yeah.
What have you done for veterans?
What are you currently doing? Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Again, yeah.
Okay.
Like we have the largest defense spending bill, and it's not going to the things that it needs to go to. Our human resources are significantly,
100%.
you know, not being taken care of with that budget, and it's hurting them and it's hurting the fleet, and it's overall just not good in general, but no one's looking at that.
I think it's a conversation for another day. I think it's a good point. I think it's, and I'm only going to touch it super briefly and then we're going to wrap up, but it's like, it's really hard for me to advocate for more people, more time. Like in last week's podcast, I advocated for, we need to spend billions of dollars on contract maintenance and contract IPs to backfill these experience gaps. Like we shouldn't be spending money letting Lockheed, or we shouldn't let these people like discharge because of fucking asthma or a PT test. And then they immediately go to Qatar, UAE, all these, you know, Afghanistan, and do contract work making $120,000 a year, much like literally what the fuck we were talking about right before we started. Like we're kicking experience out for shit that doesn't matter. And then we're immediately turning around, and those people are joining private companies, and now they're working for Norwegian government, Afghan government, Iraqi government, Saudi Arabian government. It's like, why the fuck are we growing these great technicians, kicking them out for dumb fucking reasons, and then giving that experience to other countries, and we're not deriving benefit from it? Like we got into this manning and experience hole because of sequestration, among many other or misprioritization as well. So like, it's really hard to reconcile that we have this massive DoD budget, and we're saying like, we have this huge budget, and we need more money, or we need to spend the money better. Yeah. And part of that money is going to be whatever the fuck Lockheed and Orion and all these other people are paying these people. We need to pay them and put them at Ramstein, at Spangalum, at Mildenhall, at Okinawa, Misawa Hill. We need to put them back. We need people to go back and augment.
Yes.
Because it's fucking ridiculous.
Yes.
So yes, it's hard to reconcile a $720 billion budget that we spend that much on that is not managed well. And it is by far the biggest military budget in the world. And I don't think it should be that big. However, I think money is what got us into this problem. Yes. And I think Congress needs to spend, honestly, we need to spend our way out of it, which sounds fucking awful, but I think that's the truth.
Yeah.
So
I 100% agree. And
all right, for
any Congress people that hopefully hear this one day, please pass the Vanessa Guillen Act. Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's a good point. I don't want to be a downer, but by the time a congressperson listens to this fucking podcast.
Yeah, I know. I know. But I'm just saying, if we're talking about thank you for your service.
Yeah.
If,
No, I agree.
if you're gonna thank me for my service, could you please protect me while I am fucking serving for you? That'd be great.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, which really, if you take this entire conversation and apply it to a congressperson, it's like magnified.
Yeah,
The next congressman that thanks me for my service, that's going to be a problematic conversation because my next, what have you done to earn thanking me? Let's go item by item what you've done, and that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. I won't be invited back to those conversations, so I'll get my one shot. But
I do hope that people listening to this understand that there's more to it that they could be doing. You know, I know that this is mostly going to reach military personnel, or veteran population, but I'm very hopeful that they'll understand that there should be more required. If they really say that they care about us, and you know that's something that's been complained about for a long time. We come back from serving our country, and we come back to a country that doesn't give a shit about us and doesn't actually take care of us in the way that they say that they want to. So hold them accountable to it.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's all I got. And thanks for listening, and thanks for joining me today, Ashley. And thanks to the patrons for paying money so I could get Ashley a high quality microphone.
Ashley also appreciates the microphone.
All right. That's all I got. Adios.